A wiggling, writhing mass approaches you, a form shifting and changing as if made of moving sand. Your eyes try to adjust to the darkness now surrounding you, your ears trying in vain to deafen the loud buzzing dampening your thoughts. As it closes the distance, you see it, a mass of insects, coalesced to take the shape of a monster worse than the sum of its parts. Before your world turns black, you hear through the cacophony a single phrase: "The hunger tide feasts." Greetings everyone, and welcome back to the Ether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. In this video, we're continuing our journey through the macabre and the dark places of MTG's story. This is 13 Nights of Magic. Ah yes, another frightening night to accompany another spooky story. Today we'll discuss a being of true horror, a mysterious and little-known figure who many players at first may not recognize as a character in Magic the Gathering. One who, I believe, is said to be featured in an upcoming set. This is the story of Grist, Magic's most grisly Planeswalker. Grist the Hunger Tide is probably the most unique Planeswalker in that cast of Magic the Gathering, and undoubtedly she's one of, if not the most, creepy of the bunch. She's the perfect topic for a spooky series, being obscure enough that many players may not know about this Planeswalker, and of course, looking like, well, this. Let's dive into this strange story of Grist, and learn about one of the most terrifying Planeswalkers in Magic the Gathering. And make sure you watch till the end because you may be shocked at just what Grist is all about. Grist was introduced to the MTG player base as a new Planeswalker card in Modern Horizons 2. Its card text is rather odd for a Planeswalker, saying that while it isn't on the battlefield, say in the command zone, exile, or your graveyard, that it actually counts as a 1/1 insect creature instead. Naturally, Grist cares a lot about insects and plays off of that creature type quite well with its other abilities. All of this plays perfectly with her story, because Grist herself is merely an insect. Some of you may have encountered this type of discourse before, maybe at your LGS or within your own playgroups, but people interested in the story, at least many that I've talked to, want there to be more non-human Planeswalkers as characters. While some may be content with the likes of a Johnny, who is a catfolk, but still very humanoid in design, I myself wanted Wizards to delve into the truly strange, the world of non-humanoid Planeswalkers, which we have very few examples of in MTG. Grist, however, is one such being. While on her card art we see an imposing figure of rotten flesh and writhing insects, leading some to see Grist as maybe a necromancer like Liliana Vess, this shape is merely a facade covering up Grist's true form. This, a singular insect, not a humanoid insect like the crawl on Ravnica, but literally a bug, a small, crawling around on the ground bug. But this information wasn't initially available to players when Grist the Hunger Tide debuted. The only hint to this fact was that rather unique bit of card text saying that it counts as a 1/1 insect, which now added with its lore makes a lot more sense. When this paranormal Planeswalker dropped, the only things players got about her was a poem called The Song of Grist, a haunting melody sung upon her arrival to an unexpected plane. It goes like this. The hunger tide sweeps across the land, calling us forth from slumber. A great noise shall rise from the earth as many mouths cry out for sustenance. Countless wings will darken the skies, and famine's teeth shall strip the flesh from the bones of the world. Let all this and more come to pass, that our children may partake in the endless feast. Foreboding indeed, but what else do we know about Grist? What's her story? Well, sadly, this, our most unique Planeswalker, is dreadfully lacking in any solid canon story. But if you'll allow me to go a bit off script and delve into the deep, non-canon realms of MTG, we can learn a lot more about Grist. Again, take this story with a grain of salt. It is non-canon content, but Grist the Hunger Tide does make an appearance in the Magic the Gathering comic series published by Boom, titled simply Magic. In particular, there was a spotlight series focused on the Leonin Planeswalker Ajani Goldmane and some of his adventures throughout the multiverse, one of which had him investigating a series of famines taking place with alarming regularity. The great observer and researcher of the multiverse, Tamiyo, was the first to track this rather strange occurrence. Across several planes, native farmers and extensive regions of vegetation were being devoured by a swarm of insects that seemingly came and went without warning or explanation. Still, all the reports were scarily similar: a bright flash of light in the sky, unnatural but beautiful, and a week later, a terrible dark cloud, millions of insects blotting out the sun. They would descend on their fertile lands and leave nothing but famine behind. Once gone, that same light would appear in the sky, and the insects were never seen again. The locals may have confused this with some once-in-a-lifetime natural event, but Tamiyo knew the truth. The flash of light in the sky was the indicator that a planeswalker was behind all of these swarms. As the investigation continued, Tamiyo talked to the peoples of Kamigawa and Eldraine, whose farmers too had been a victim of this planeswalker. They described in detail a terrible form taken by the insects. They danced together, creating the illusion of a zombie-like creature, with rotting flesh replaced by all manner of creepy crawlies. This had to be the one responsible. Yet Tamiyo doesn't dare to intervene directly. She was there to just record history, not to change it. Though she knew one who could possibly aid the fair people of the multiverse: Ajani Goldmane. Ajani shares Tamiyo's concern for the devastated communities experiencing these famines. He agreed to help, and aided in tracking down the next time this mysterious light in the sky would occur and on what plane, Ajani having the power to sense and follow a planeswalker spark. As they ambushed this being at their next feast, Ajani alone ventured into the heart of a massive swarm. While it was gorging itself on everything green around him, he noticed the world turning into a wasteland right in front of his eyes. Yet the insects never harmed him. He reached out through the dark, writhing mass, searching for a spark, and in a flicker, he found it. With his natural reflexes, his claws pinched harmlessly around a single bug of the swarm. This was Grist. Ajani was stunned. This insect, it has a soul? A planeswalker spark? He had no clue that such beings could exist. Grist, too, was just as shocked. She was a soul trapped in her own world, with her own perspective. She knew nothing but the swarm. She didn't even know she was a planeswalker. She just understood how to feed. Being a soul driven by a hive mind mentality, feasting wasn't only meant for her. That's why she communicated with every insect around her to lead a feast. The tide was always hungry. She sought out lush green lands through even the blind eternity, and no matter where she went, a swarm would be waiting for her. Yet, in this limited perspective, she wasn't even aware humanoids existed, which meant she didn't know that her feasts were causing harm to them. Tamiyo was brought in to catalog this amazing discovery. It was Tamiyo who suggested to Grist that maybe her swarms could continue to feed on green plains, but in a much more responsible way. She suggested that, here on the plane of Eldraine, that her insects could feed off the vast wilds rather than the farms found closer to villages. In the same spirit, Grist could instruct her swarms to consume leaves and plants, but to keep the bark on trees and shrubs intact, ensuring that they would grow back over time. Grist, surprisingly, had no issue with these demands. She's not an evil planeswalker, knowingly going out of her way to hurt people and communities, but rather a being who just didn't have the perspective to see the damage that she was inflicting. Grist agrees to restrain her feedings. Still, Ajani is wary. He had been burned by half-hearted promises of planeswalkers in the past. He made sure Grist knew that if she and her swarms returned to knowingly attacking farmlands, that he would come for her. That is how trust should be earned. But for today, Ajani released his claws and let the tiny planeswalker go. They left as tentative allies. Now, again, all of that is from a non-canon source, but really Grist's story there took a pretty surprising turn, and I think I like it. You take this being that, on the surface, looks like a reanimated corpse, a haunting visage of life as perceived by this conscious swarm of insects. You take that and turn it on its head as a single planeswalking insect who simply doesn't have a reference point for life outside of a hive. But in learning about how her actions affect other living beings, decides to make a positive change. It's an interesting angle to take her story, one befitting of the most unique Planeswalker in Magic the Gathering. I, of course, want to see more canon lore on Grist in the future. We can't just be left with a poem and some comics as our only material. I demand a whole origin story of Grist. And just for this spooky season, I want to make a prediction. I think we're going to get that in an upcoming set. We're set to venture to the plane of Bloomburrow. It's seemingly inhabited with all manner of small folk, sentient and humanoid mice, frogs, and squirrels. If all of these critters could have souls, then so too could the insects here, which could point us to Grist's home plane. I think if there was ever a time to give Grist more lore and explain how a lowly insect can become a planeswalker, Bloomburrow will be it. And there you go, my little panicking planeswalkers. Another night of spooky stories as we go through the 13 Nights of Magic. Please let me know how you're enjoying the frightening content in the comment section below. Please support our haunting work by leaving this video a like, sharing it with friends, and becoming a subscriber. It's the best way to help us spread more grief across the multiverse. And until next foreboding evening, friends, see ya!